This guy was a poor worker with a normal life, but he was betrayed by his girlfriend for being poor and talentless. She left him for a guy who was getting rich. But what she didn't expect was that Lin wasn't exactly as poor as she thought. Lin became a multi-millionaire by discovering a system that let him change jobs every week, earning him large sums of money, as well as luxury cars and properties. His girlfriend's betrayal wasn't a cause for sadness. In fact, it opened doors for him to meet new women who valued him and were even more attractive with incredible curves. The story begins with Lin Yi being fired from his job, and apparently, he wasn't even given a reason why. He then calls his girlfriend, Si Lu, to try and break the news, but before he can say anything, she tells him she wants to break up because Lin is still poor even after all their time together. She tells him he doesn't need to come to her party anymore, and that he should never call her again. As he gets into the elevator on the worst day of his life, Lin notices a suspicious blue light surrounding him. Suddenly, a beautiful woman dressed as a maid called him master, saying that she was his servant, Lin Wei, and welcomed him the full career experience system. Basically, he can try a new profession every week, and completing all the tasks will give him a final reward. Clearly on cloud 9, he thought it was finally time to stop being a complete nobody. As if getting the new job wasn't enough, he also won a starting prize of 10 million and a Pagani Zonda worth 30 million. When he comments that he could be a driver for the rest of his life with a car like that, she reminds him that he could only try one profession per week. But apparently, Lin didn't care about that since he was getting a lot of money. Next, she takes the car key from him, saying that he needed to claim the Peninsula Hotel, and, after giving the coordinates of the car's location, she hands the key to him. When he arrives at the garage, he notices a beautiful woman in front of him named Ji Qingyan. Apparently, she was having some problems with her car. When he asks what happened to Miss Ji, she tells him what had happened, and he asks if she would like a ride since Lin seemed to be broke. But apparently, she had already rejected this young man a few times before, and rejected him again. Lin then takes matters into his own hands and says that he would be in charge of taking her to where she needed to go. She then tells her stalker that she didn't mind going in a broken down car, but let's just say that they were both suddenly surprised when they saw the 30 million Pagani, making the spoiled brat impressed with it. Finally, Lin asks Miss G to get in the car, this time humiliating the little boy's car that was there. As they got into the car, the spoiled brat was asking to go for a spin with him, but was left behind eating the Pagani's dust. She, impressed with his car, asks if he really owned the car, since recently he was just an employee in the sales department, and he says yes, and that he was a rich kid who was just there to experience what it was like to be poor. Lin then asks her to start a ride on the BlaBla app and become his first customer, and so she did. With the request made, he took her to the location and finally says goodbye to his new private driver. Suddenly, the girl from before appears in miniature form on his shoulder, congratulating him for completing his first task, rewarding him with 50 million, and he was impressed with the amount he received for just completing a single ride. At the Peninsula Hotel, his ex was with her new rich boyfriend, wishing she had met him sooner, and suddenly, she realizes that Lin was there too. She, upon seeing him, thought that he had gone there only to win her back, but he made it very clear that he was just there to spend some money. She then decides to call the security guards to kick him out, and as if that wasn't enough, she still insults him by calling him a beggar. But when the security guards arrived, they all prostrated themselves before him, leaving both her and her boyfriend, impressed by the authority he had over that place. This only increases when one of the security guards calls him to the meeting room to report their performance. Only then did the Viper realize that she had lost a rich man. In the meeting room, an employee enters, saying that there was a customer who wanted to file a complaint against them just for having rented a car that was already being used by some VIP users. With that, he leaves the finances with them and decides to go to the location to talk to the girl. When she answers the door, he says that he would solve her problem, and her name was Gu Jing Sua, but I'll just call her Jin. With that, the protagonist asks if she wouldn't like to rent his Pagani, but since she couldn't afford to rent supercars like that, she says she didn't know how to drive a car like that. With that, he suggests that he take her to where she was going, and she ends up accepting, asking him to wait a little while. She got ready. While she was getting ready, he had a privileged view that few in life have, and she was finally ready. In the main hall, the snake was dumping her new rich boyfriend, and he finally realized what woman she was. Cease was bragging, thinking that Lin would really forgive her just for the fact that they had been together for so many years. Her friend then started to get a little jealous of her, but she says that she would take her for a ride in the Pagani later. But little did she know that Lin was already in very good company, and Cease approaches him as if nothing had happened, saying that she would take care of his business from now on. With all the kindness in the world, Lin says that it was none of her business who that girl was. Here, she plays the victim, asking if he didn't love her anymore, and even says that the girl next to him didn't have as good skills as hers to manage his business. Jin then joins the game and says that a little while ago, he had said that she was much better than his ex-girlfriend, and he takes the opportunity to add that she also had great flexibility. He then decides to leave, and his ex said that she was willing to be even the second option if he wanted, but he tells her to leave, among other things, and that she should not bother him anymore, leaving her on the floor, getting revenge for being humiliated on the phone. Inside the car, she tells him where she was going and apologizes for bothering him, but it was no bother at all, since she had just helped him with the problem as well. At the hotel where she was going, her friends were complaining that she was late, and it seems they didn't believe that Jin actually had a rich boyfriend, like she always said. A short time later, they arrive in his Pagani, and her friends were impressed by her boyfriend's car. With that, she says that she had helped him before, and asked him to do the same for her now. Finally, Lin says goodbye to her as if he were really her boyfriend. In one part of the city, an old lady was complaining that Lin was 10 days late with the rent, and her daughter was trying to calm her down while the old woman complained that he might run away. Someone ended up knocking on the door, and upon opening it, it was Lin who was there to say goodbye as he was leaving, and had only come to pack his things. The lady then says that he needed to pay what he owed before leaving. Already completely agitated, he owed 2,000 in rent, but sent 4,000 to her account as compensation for the previous delay. Since he was moving out so suddenly, the landlady asked if he had found something new, and he says that he was now a blah blah driver. As he went to his car, the old woman decided to follow him, just to see if he hadn't stolen anything from her house, and they come across a beautiful Pagani that was parked right in front of her residence. When she asks where his old car was, he finally reveals that he was the owner of the Pagani that was there, leaving her speechless for having gotten so rich so suddenly, and he just says that he stopped pretending as he was just experiencing what it was like to be poor. When he leaves in a hurry, the girl started to think that she might have a chance with him, but her mother says that since he wasn't good enough when he was poor, now that he was rich, she didn't stand a chance. At the hotel he was managing, his employees had reserved a presidential suite for him, and he finally got to have a good meal after so long without eating. He then receives a message from Miss G, asking him to pick her up as she had finished her work. 30 minutes later, he had gone to pick up the beautiful princess, and as soon as she gets in the car, he asks if she wouldn't like to place an order. A little confused by what he was talking about, she asks what order it was, and he says it was the blah blah app her, otherwise he wouldn't make any money. She, realizing that he took this blah blah ride business seriously, wonders how someone so dedicated could have been fired. She worked at the same company as him but had a management position or something like that. Suddenly, the girl from before appears, telling him not to worry because Miss G couldn't see her. She then says that the girl in his car was very beautiful, and the system gave her a score of 85. In addition, he successfully completed the second request, and got a new task where he needed to transport 2 women with a score of 85 or more in addition to other rewards. Lin then asks what woman was considered above 85 points, and she says it would be a woman like Miss G. After that, the beautiful damsel in his car asks if he wouldn't take her home, and it seemed like he was going through a more difficult time. When he asks if her problem was a personal or business matter, she says it was business, as they needed to hold a launch event soon and hadn't been able to rent a hotel yet. When he tells her to go to the Peninsula Hotel, she thought she wouldn't have a chance of getting reservations at a super hotel like that. Lin replies that that wasn't necessarily true. After all, life was full of surprises, and she compliments him for being so good with words, asking him to turn the car around and go to the Peninsula Hotel. However, she says that if they didn't get a deal, she wouldn't pay for the change of route. When he asks what would happen if she did get the deal, she asks back what he would like as a reward, and he says that she would have to do 10 squats in front of him. When he tells her to look up the type of squat on her phone, she realizes that it was too embarrassing, but soon remembers that earlier she had already called to try to make a reception, and the manager had said that there was nothing available at the moment. So her chances of winning were practically certain, and she ends up accepting his offer. At the hotel reception, Miss G says that she would like to speak with manager Wang, and the receptionist wonders if this was her boss's new love, pretending to be poor again, and that she was much more beautiful than the ex-girlfriend. In the hall, the manager receives her, and she asks if they would have a hotel auditorium available for rent, and thanks to the help of Lin, who was behind her, commanding everything, the manager says that he could arrange the rental for any day she wanted. Over the moon, she thanks him and gives the date she would like to rent. After that, her problem was solved, and Lin says that it was now time for her to keep her promise, the bet they had made earlier, and she asks if he still remembered it. But still, as she was the president of the company, she had to keep her promise, and he approaches her so that she could do the squats. However, since they were still inside the car, she asks if they couldn't go to her house and talk about it, and since it was very small and cramped there, it was indeed better for them to go to her house. He then steps on the gas to get there as quickly as possible, leaving her in doubt as to at the divine lady's house. She asks if he would like to receive the payment at that moment, and he clearly answers yes. Before she starts, she says that she had never done this thing before, so he shouldn't complain if she didn't do well. And finally, her training begins. We saw that an old man suddenly appears, and it turns out that it is the divine lady's dad.